So, hey, so today I'm talking with a friend and fellow healer, Nicolette. Nicolette has the direction of mind and body and food, but we have this overlap of energy work, and we used to work on the same floor. So I'm happy to have you here, Nicolette. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to do this.
So, back when we met, it was because I was teaching a Reiki class. Really, that's how we first met, and then maybe you came as a client a time or two later. I don't even remember, but then the other room was available on that third floor. So then I was like, oh my God, you'd be perfect for it. So I was glad that you rented it, because it was nice to be like on the third floor roommates with you, or housemates or whatever, and the office mates. We shared a bathroom and but
Yeah, that was such
cool.
a cute. I love that place. It was so cute and magical the way it all worked out, because I love that office so much. That space was just wonderful, and being there and with your energy work there, it felt so nice. So I'm glad. I'm so sad that I'm not there anymore.
No, COVID forced us out. So
Yeah.
I'm no longer
Yeah.
there either. But the being in that attic space, it was extra special, and it was like crown chakra energy, so it was
Yeah.
kind of nice. But so to introduce yourself to people, like, tell us what you do.
So I work with women in healing disordered and unhealthy eating habits. Basically, the kind of work is more holistic. It's mind, body, and soul. And I've created a program called Eating Intelligence that is about harnessing the wisdom of our minds, bodies, soul, and food, and combining our multidimensional selves in order to really move from an unhealthy place or an unhealthy way of relating with food to a place that feels harmonious and peaceful and free, and really more in alignment with who we really are. I think because of our conditioning through society, through family, through culture, through any different context that we learn our relationship with food, we pick up habits or start to do things that don't really mesh well with who we are. And my job is to really unwind that and help women identify, this actually serves me, this doesn't, this serves me, this doesn't, because we don't really know, because we're not really taught how to eat. And I always say that humans just have to be taught. We're kind of smart as humans on some levels, and then on other levels we're not very instinctual. So this is one of those things, we have to really relearn and unlearn, and that's what my work is, and I love it.
Well, I remember back, I don't know, a couple of years ago, when my younger son Andrew was worried about his weight but didn't really care enough to like do anything. And I remember asking you for like some advice or something, and one thing you mentioned that I remember is like, you're feeding your cells. Like, just think about, you're feeding your cells. And that was like a nice tool to kind of visualize, like, instead of being like what makes your cells happy kind of like. So that was like my little, I guess, my brief peek into how you look at these things, from a different perspective. But so what got you into the work that you're doing? Like, did you go to school for that, or was it like nutrition and then it turned to like mindset? Like, I know that I'm sure you've had like how spirit guided you from one direction to another, so I'm curious how you ended up there.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's probably goes way back to when I was a child. I think I was in training for this for a really long time, and gosh, I can go back even before I was born. I truly believe in the inherited and generational trauma I have experienced, not personally in my own life, but my mother's experience with being food insecure when she was little. She grew up in communist regime, and they took so much from our family. So she didn't have access to the food that she really needed. And so she developed a lot of fear around food, and also sort of like unhealthy, but rightfully so, just human responsiveness to that kind of an environment growing up with, not having access to the amount of food that she really needed or wanted even. And here I am coming along many years later, and it's partly genetics, right? It's partly epigenetics. It's partly just environment of growing up in it, that's in growing up in the 70s is like, clean your plate.
Yeah.
finish everything. It wasn't really about honoring our souls and honoring our true hunger and satiety cues and finding out and helping us sort of learn how to be an eater. It's just get these kids fed, get food in the belly. And that was the kind of energy a lot of us grew up in. And I also had this sort of energy coming from my mom, like eat, like it's not okay unless your belly is full, because
Right.
she learned this association when she was little.
Yeah.
So fast forward many years, I just really wasn't doing, I didn't feel super comfortable, confident in my body with my eating habits. Through high school, I was competitively swimming and doing gymnastics and equestrian team, and body image shows up in those sports quite a bit. So combine that with the diet mentality now in the 90s and slim fast and things like that. I just had a whole heap of really not very nourishing or healthy habits, beliefs, thoughts, practices around food and my body. I studied psychology as my undergraduate degree, and I have always been really curious about human behavior and learning how to optimize, feel better. I just am ultimately somebody who is a problem solver and wanting to find the silver lining. So between those two traits, right, I'm thinking there's got to be a better way other than what we're taught out there, meaning diet culture. It's about losing weight if you don't feel good in your body, which just is not the answer, right? Body image is really, really powerful to explore outside of weight. It's not directly connected to our weight. And so fast forwarding, then I got my graduate degree in integrative health and healing. I have trainings in mind-body nutrition, eating psychology, eating disorder, intuitive therapy, Reiki through you, shamanism, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, so many different healing modalities. And I really started to put together this holistic view of how we're relating to food, how we're relating to our bodies, and connecting really on a deep level to our bodies and life in general. It's so much more than we're just this like tube. We just put something in, goes out, and we just go on about our business. We're turning into and we're creating with every single bite that we're eating. And so without making it an obsessive thing, I just think valuing food and treating it as a sacred act allows us to really tap into our truth as these multidimensional beings.
Wow. Like that was nice.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And like I was thinking, I had like a thought fly through like the success stories that you've experienced with clients. Like what do they look like when they arrive, and how does your coaching and education like shift them as people, and what do you see in their mindset, in their physical outcome, like whatever, all of it.
So the approach that I use is practical, energetic, and spiritual. And practical, and it depends. What is someone's relationship with food like? How long have they been dealing with it? What are the challenges that they've had? What is the goal? The goal isn't necessarily always weight loss. Sometimes it's just feeling peaceful around food. Sometimes it's just wanting to have a healthier body image and not beat themselves up and thinking about weight loss constantly. So depending on where someone is coming from, it really, really depends. I always have to say it depends on, oh, somebody wants to come say hi. Hold on.
Yes, sir. It's so cute.
So wherever somebody is coming into my work from really depends on the approach. So like I said, it's a practical, spiritual, and energetic kind of approach. So sometimes if somebody's really not very consistent with their eating habits, maybe we're going to work on discipline. Maybe we're going to work on their sleep. what they're actually eating. Are they eating foods that are sort of triggering their blood sugar to spike and drop, and then they're feeling out of control? Are they under eating? Are they eating enough? Are they eating enough nutrients? Because I always say we're going to eat for nutrients, number one, like feeding your cells, feeding your body. Cellular turnover is happening whether we're eating Big Macs or we're eating, stir-fried vegetables. It's happening. So those elements are being incorporated into us. So we're eating for nutrients, we're going to eat for energy and vitality and longevity. And I put that just together as one, because if we're not feeding ourselves with the expectation that we're going to become old people, God willing, at some point, we're not really being proactive in achieving a better state, physical, mental, emotional, when we're older. So I put all of those into kind of one category: vitality, longevity, and energy, and also eating for pleasure. So if somebody is coming into me and they're used to denying themselves and they're eating certain foods that they really dislike because they're so wrapped up in diet mentality, and I'll take the example is chicken. Just because I have never liked chicken. So I've had like so many clients feel the same way, which is so interesting, but they eat chicken all the time. I'm like, what are you doing eating chicken? And they're like, well, it's protein and it's considered a diet food and weight loss and fill up and stuff like that. So I will work with them in those kinds of areas. Let's challenge these beliefs. Number one, that I have to eat this protein. There's this whole meat cult that is happening in our country that is really confusing people and making them think they have to eat so much protein, and that's mistaken as animal products, right? And that just is really doing so much harm to people and they don't realize it. So it's unpacking and unwinding those beliefs. So sometimes someone might come to me and their limitations are just really around these beliefs about what they're eating. And then when they kind of start to open up, it's really, the awakening process is just, I just start to see things a little differently. Sometimes it's so subtle. It's not some massive like aha, but a lot of times it can be too.
Right.
That I just now am making different choices when I'm eating. I feel more aligned with what I'm eating now instead of what I thought I had to eat.
Yeah.
Exactly. So as far as the practical things, there's just a lot of things, it can be, what's their movement like? Are they getting outside in nature? Are they hydrating? All of these sorts of things. Then there's the energetic part. Am I emotional eating? Am I struggling with really knowing my true hunger and satiety cues because I'm so not connected? I have no sort of indication on my hunger, fullness, satiety cues or my true needs and desires, because most people are walking heads, right? Their consciousness is just up here above the neck, and below is where we are connected, where we experience being embodied, where we experience our presence and our real true awareness of ourselves as multidimensional beings when we're aware of ourselves below the neck. And so this is the energetic work, is allowing or providing or even inviting someone into embody and to sink deeper and deeper into their sensations. This can be done through mindfulness, through meditation, through just practicing presence. Being in nature really can help people embody a lot too.
Yeah.
Because there's so much disconnection that is just sort of part of our world now, part of our culture and our society. So there, with energetics side, it's boundaries, it's relationships. If I do not have boundaries within myself, then I usually cannot show up with boundaries with other people. And then if I have interactions which are not feeling nurturing, nourishing to me, or they feel harmful, I can turn to food, because that's maybe what I learned to do when I was young. I had no control food comforted me, food didn't judge me, food didn't criticize me. And then we never really unwind that and form a new neural connection. We just are finding ourselves in those same patterns again. So then we may end up in a relationship or have, other situations in our lives that are mirroring those very things that we need to bring more awareness, consciousness to, and healing. And so that energy work is really important. Where's my vibration? Am I typically walking around feeling very low, stressed, angry, frustrated? Or am I able to connect more into my heart space energy, joy, gratitude, appreciation, love? When we're eating in those states of the lower chakra vibration and energy, that's when digestive issues can be really common. Overeating, we're not really just connected to how full we might be. And when we're connected more to heart space energy, upper chakras, we are able to digest our food a lot better. Our body can be in a healing place. We're more connected to, how do I feel? Does this feel like it would be nourishing to me? Or does it feel like I would be better off having something else? Is it for my highest good? And that brings me to the spiritual component, which is ultimately, how does this serve us? How does our relationship with food bring us into more expansiveness within, more connection to ourselves on a deeper level while connecting outside of ourselves, right? We're able to get to know ourselves better. If I don't know what to eat, how do I really know myself then? Right? So creating self-awareness, cultivating self-regard, then self-care, right? Because the more I care for myself, the more I am really aligning with who I really am as a multidimensional being of light, love, and just, right, really harnessing our attention and our energy for ourselves. Because the more we're caring for ourselves, then we cultivate self-love. And self-love is really the foundation of a lasting lifestyle of nutrition that really truly enhances you, because you become unavailable. Just like with establishing boundaries with other people, you establish boundaries within yourself. I'm unavailable for shitty treatment from that person or from that food, right? Because that food actually makes me feel crappy, and I value my body because it's part of me. It doesn't define me. It's part of me. But then we're developing this entire alignment within ourselves. And then that's when our relationship with food is completely effortless. There's no stress. There's no, kind of discontentment. You feel free and peaceful around food. So wherever somebody is coming in, right, it just, it so depends. What are the real challenges? I do a lot of intake questions when I start working with someone to find out, and I can tune into, as an intuitive, where some energy is really strong, and that sort of sets the tone and the pace for where we're going to go after that. So often, to summarize all of that, that it can be so subtle, but it's really about changing the trajectory, because our relationship with food is the longest relationship of our lives. So we start to look at our relationship with food and our bodies from a new perspective, and that takes us in another direction. And ultimately, I want someone to feel like they don't need to talk to me ever again, because they get it. They're connected.
To offer them those tools. I know, because it's it's like your body is like your vessel, it's your vehicle. So it's like you feed it good fuel, and the nights that I make like a Buddha bowl where it's like a bunch of kale and sweet potatoes and chickpeas and all of that good stuff. It's like you feel so clear-headed and like energized and clean and light. And then it's like, compared to eating a shitty meal, and you're like, why did I do that to myself? I thought I loved myself. Like even like I don't really drink much alcohol, but occasionally I will. And if I ever drink too much, which for me is like 2 drinks, or 3, but that's even rare. But like, I'm always, like the few times I've gotten drunk as an adult, I cried. And I'm like, why did I do this to myself? I love my body. Why did I poison it? So like, I get like, like, it's like, I love me. Why would I want to hurt me? So I just don't have like a high tolerance for alcohol. I don't mind a little, a little giggly, but that's about all I can take. But like whenever it's like upsetting because you're like, and people poison themselves all the time regularly. And you're like, oh my God,
Right.
how do people do that? So,
Right. And it's part of our culture. Society promotes drinking alcohol. Society promotes eating food that is really not nourishing for us. And guess what? We're human. We're not here to be perfect. And I don't ever claim to say a relationship with food has a level of perfection. And then after that, it's just coasting. It's not about perfection. It is about having those times where you do end up eating foods that don't feel very good, but how do I treat myself after that? Am I forgiving? Am I judgmental?
right,
Am I feeling, like critical of myself for doing that?
right.
And that ends up sort of having the energy that feeds into doing it again and again and again. When we can learn to let ourselves off the hook
Mhm.
and just give ourselves permission to be imperfect human beings amidst working on healing our relationship with food and our body and cultivating a greater, more nourishing relationship with food, those things don't stick. They become further and further in between. And I had that exact same experience too. If I, ended up eating things and I'm like, I was literally eating it and I'm like, this isn't gonna feel good. This is not gonna feel good. Or you have another glass of wine, like, probably don't need this. But
Mhm.
that's part of it. And that's okay that those things happen. That's what makes it real. And we're
Mhm.
human and we're not here to be perfect robots. We're here
Right.
just to navigate society and simultaneously try to get into alignment as
Mhm.
often as we can, because we're supposed to slip out of alignment. That's the contrast that teaches us, right? That this
Yeah.
doesn't feel good. This is not really in alignment with me. And that's okay.
Um, since following your business page, like whatever, I don't know how I didn't, but I was on Instagram for a while without realizing that you had an Instagram page, but somewhere along the way, I guess you followed me. I was like, oh wow, that's right. Nicolette has a business page. So following your business page, it's been, like so comforting. And like I love what you, share with others. And there's two things. I'm much like the one was when you're on vacation and you had the Diet Coke. I thought that was funny because you're like,
Mhm.
oh my God, I haven't had a Diet Coke in 20 years. And like there was so few things to choose from and it was cold and bubbly. So you're like, ah, screw it. I'm on vacation. And you're like, oh my God, I had like a headache like 20 minutes later or something like that. Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I think we
like,
get so used to feeling bad
right.
that, I used to drink them every day, and I didn't really think it was an issue. And granted, that's a different body. Our bodies change constantly, and the
Right.
older you get too, you don't always have the same tolerance, because I think our bodies are teaching us constantly
Mhm.
what they are available for. Our bodies are teaching us boundaries. And they're saying, no, I am not available for that third glass of wine or whatever it might have been. I'm not available for that Diet Coke. Yeah, you think, no, it's teaching us. So when we're like, okay, like I'm listening, I got you. And the problem actually arises when we override that and we don't respect our bodies and we don't listen to them and let them know, I do care about you.
Mhm.
And I'm going to stop drinking this Diet Coke right now because it's giving me a headache. It
Right.
tastes cold and bubbly, and I like sweet things. So, I mean, it was an easy thing to want to just keep taking a few more sips. But I said that was a good experiment. I'm glad I did that. It was nice to take a trip down memory lane, but ultimately where I am now is light years away from where I was before, where I would have been like, oh, screw it, it's going to fill me up, or
Mhm.
whatever I might have used as rationale for drinking it in the past. So,
Right. And like also your mindset of just being like, like love your body for where it's at. And if you have to force it to do things, then it's not really its natural state. And I have like a friend who does intermittent fasting, and I did it for like 2 months in 2020, and I was able to drop whatever 10 pounds or something. And it eventually crept back because I went back to eating. I really like eating breakfast, like I don't like going hungry, but
same.
and
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to get used to it. And so, and now I think that hormones are a factor and my weight has gone up more. And I'm just like, I honestly feel I'm not even like beating myself up about, I never really beat myself up about it, but I would work at keeping a certain number. And now I don't even care. And I'm just like, but I have to get new, get new pants because my pants are a little tight now. And I'm just like, and that's a hard one. Like the number on the scale and the size of the jeans, that's like, it's still a little bit of a mental hurdle. And I'm like ugh, annoyed by that, but I'm also totally content with like my body and like how I feel in my body right now. So I'm like loving and accepting of myself, but there's like that little stray bits of shit, man, I have to buy the next size up in pants, you know? And like, if I'm working out now too, and I'm not like restricting, I'm just eating whatever. And but mindfully and healthfully. And it's just, the weight's not going anywhere. And I'm like, all right, I guess this is that part of my life where this is what happens and I have to be okay with it. So I just was like at one point when you're talking about whatever it was, I jotted down isogenics because a couple of years ago I tried isogenics and I lost like 10 pounds in like 6 weeks. And then like ultimately, I forget what, maybe 15 or 20. And but I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to go live off of a shake. Like, I hated it. I did it for 1 month and that was all I could handle. And then after that, I like did it once in a while or something, like for like a little period of time here and there, but never committed. But I just don't want to do that shit anymore. Like, I'm just like, no, like this is where I'm at and I have to deal with my fat face. That's mean. But you know, my face looks giant sometimes.
I don't think it looks any different. I'm looking at you. You haven't changed a bit since I met you like 8 years ago or whatever, however long ago that was.
My husband pulled up an old home video a couple of weeks ago and I was like, oh my God, my arms were so skinny. But I'm like, whatever, like it's fine. Like I was 10 years younger, you know, like it's okay. So
But you know, diet culture does such a number on all of us. We all have these thoughts sometimes that creep in, and it can be about the clothing size, either one way or the other. I feel bad because it's going up. I feel good because it's going down. And this is attachment, right? Attachment to the body, attachment to a number. And that's part of we can go in a whole different direction with this, but it's the product of living in a patriarchy and having numbers and systems and tools of measuring ourselves and deeming ourselves as valid or invalid, good or bad, worthy or not worthy. And this just doesn't work for so many women. So when we're super attached to, I'm getting into a smaller size, that's not necessarily healthy, right? Losing weight and releasing weight, it can be a neutral thing. It's not like it's good or bad per se, but it's our mindset and how we're going about it. Do I feel like I'm better, more worthy as a person if I am losing weight? And then how am I gauging that? Is it through external validation because there's a number on a scale that tells me I'm doing good and a number on a scale that tells me I'm doing bad? And so I usually recommend to get rid of the scales, period. Throw them away. They do so much more harm than good to females, especially. I mean, you know, males too. I'm not really in the exact same camp, but even still, I said, you know what do you actually have to know that number for? Because we are multidimensional beings. We have an emotional reaction to the seeing that number. And
I used to say if my scale would just read the same number every day, I'd feel just as I'd be fine. You know, it's the number that fucks up your head. So we could just put a sticker over the scale and say 145 and I'd be really happy. But it's like I'm not 145 anymore. So let go of that number.
Right. And that number is not just a number. It represents so many different things and it responds to so many different things. If you take your scale and you put it on the basement floor and you weigh yourself versus on the top floor of your house, you might very well have a different number, depending on your hydration level, your hormone fluctuations, how much food you might have in your system at any given time. Where are you in your cycle? Where are you in your your whole life? Because our bodies are not meant to be the same, especially as women. Our bodies are meant to change, meant to shift, meant to fluctuate. But then we take this overarching sort of ideology of being consistent with a number, and that just is not synergistic with our nature. So we fight our nature, but when we can learn to roll with it, because how often have we had this experience, and I know I used to have it all the time when I was weighing myself, that I felt like I was doing everything right and I should be losing weight. I felt light. I felt good. I thought I looked a certain way. And then I step on the scale and that number was either the same or it went up. And it just,
Messes you up. Yeah.
it squashes your confidence in a way, but that's because we tie our confidence into a number.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why I say we have to just eliminate it, period. Like I said, put a blanket around it, duct tape it, throw it in the back of your closet, get rid of it, recycle it, donate it, give it to somebody. Just stop, because what that does is siphon out our energy into other areas. And that energy then is left outside of ourselves. We don't have it anymore to use to inspire us, to keep us on track in a way. And I don't mean that in like this super structured way where I have to only do this and eat that and only eat during these windows and things like that. Like, I actually think intermittent fasting can do so much harm for women. I think
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was listening to something, I forget where, some podcast I follow, and they were linking, I think it was Sarah Walton's, and she had somebody on talking about postmenopausal changes and weight and stuff, and they were linking intermittent fasting to some kind of adrenal problems like later in life or something like that. So it's like, because it can mess you up by not following your cues. So
it absolutely can derail you from your hunger and satiety cues, but even more so than that, your actual intuition, your gut health, your sense of connectedness within. And then you're primed for disordered eating. And then the problem with that is people begin to convince themselves, I don't need to eat before this time. And they lose track. Their body stops sending them signals too. It's not just like got used to it. Their body just kind of like, fine, you're not going to listen to me anyway. You're not going to feed me. And then other things become more and more imbalanced, but sometimes it's happening on subtle levels that people don't realize. They just think, hey, I'm succeeding at this intermittent fasting thing, or I'm losing weight. And that was my only goal, but it wasn't really, it's not about doing it in a healthy way. It was just about seeing a number on a scale or getting into a smaller size clothing that we don't realize simultaneously. Emotional, mental health is starting to decline. I'm feeling more critical. Sometimes body image issues can show up even more. Even when someone's losing weight, they might start to feel worse and worse about themselves. They might feel more insecure. They might have a harder time standing up for themselves. All of these things can start to sort of creep up. And when we're siphoning out our energy to all of these external sources of validation, as opposed to inside and just saying, I am good enough just the way I am. I am willing to take better and better care of myself. I'm really learning now and developing a powerful self-care practice that's going to support me. And sometimes that does mean that you're not going to eat until 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. Sometimes you might not be hungry, but you'll know that, and it will happen naturally. We naturally will fast sometimes, right? And sometimes that can be really, really beneficial to give our bodies a break from digestion. But when it's a forced thing constantly, it just ends up harming women especially. I think it's far more compatible with men to do intermittent fasting, but that's a whole other story.
Okay. And the other thing that popped to mind was when you're talking about like our, the fluctuation of our weight and just hormonally and whatever. I listened to something about like working with your cycle, with exercise. And I went to Pilates this morning, and I actually got my period like later, but I knew it was coming, and I was like so drained, and I was like, I don't want to jump on, like I didn't want to do any of the active stuff. And I was like, this is counter to what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Like this is I forget, it's like luteal or whatever. I don't remember the phases, but like it was the time of rest. And I was forcing myself to be there because I'm like, I'm paying for this membership, for 3 months. I got to commit it,
Right.
I'm like, damn, like I probably shouldn't be doing that right now. I should probably be doing something else, but because it's so expensive, I was forcing myself to go. So,
But that's such beautiful awareness.
mhm,
And that's so important to have that, because you hit the nail on the head. It's forcing ourselves. Whenever we're doing that,
mhm,
as opposed to, and that's usually connected to that sort of disembodied kind of energy,
mhm,
right? It's, I think, head up, I'm
mhm,
thinking that I should do this, as
mhm,
opposed to working with what I'm feeling. Embodied approach would be, I need to rest for 2 weeks straight because my body is going through something right now.
mhm,
But forcing ourselves to do anything, and I do this too sometimes, because there is a little bit of leeway there. There's a little bit of room that when discipline needs to kick in, because we're not meant to just be like, I don't feel like it today, I'm not going to move my body. Sometimes, depending on who we are and where we are in our journey, we might look for that as an excuse,
mhm,
and then we're not moving our body at all, and that's really not necessarily healthy for us. But also that little window of saying, I'm going to push myself a little bit, but then check in again and see. And
yeah,
then you get, like, you got that clear signal, this really isn't for me now. So it's a beautiful thing to honor where you are in that moment. And the truth is that if we're exercising for weight loss, let's say, and we're forcing ourselves to keep going when we don't actually really want to work out, that's derailing us again, disconnecting us from our intuition. But it can actually work against weight loss too,
I've heard
because
that. Yeah.
yeah, we're working ourselves into a state of stress. We activate our
Mhm,
sympathetic response. Our body is going to hold on to weight. And there are so many times when am going hard with exercise and I'm loving it. And then there are times I'm like right now, it's been about a month. I've only taken a few yoga classes or whatever, and I haven't really worked out that much. And we have this habit of believing that means something,
mhm,
that it's going to mean I'm going to gain weight. And often there's a fear, right? And my weight had fluctuated between 40 pounds, at different points in my life. And
mhm.
for a long time, I had a fear. If I'm not working out, I can gain weight back again, and I don't want to go back there.
Right.
But that's what keeps the disordered mindset going,
Mhm,
right? It's starting to unhook from that and connect further in. And that's why we should really think about the scales and things like that, because that's what disconnects us and makes us go by what we think and not what we're feeling. If we're connected to what we're feeling, we're honoring our body, and our body naturally regulates and gets to its healthy weight. And sometimes it does need to hold on to a little bit more weight for its highest good.
mhm.
We just have to get peaceful with that.
Right.
Some years we might have to have a little bit more weight on.
Mhm,
And, like postmenopausal women, it's been shown, tend to gain more weight around their hips, but it actually is the body's way of protecting itself against hip fractures when we fall down when we're elderly.
hmm.
So if we have no extra weight around our hips because we're fighting and struggling against any, 2-pound weight gain or whatever it might be, we can actually do more harm than good. Our body knows. Our bodies are so brilliant and wise. So we work with it, and of course, it's not to say that what we're eating doesn't have an impact, because it does have a huge impact on our weight and our overall well-being too.
Well, there was something I think my sister told me she heard where they said the reason why postmenopausal women gain weight like they do is to like save the tribe. Like so like the new babies being born in could have food where like they could go without. So it's just like a,
Mm,
like I
I
don't know.
love that. I've heard that too.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
just like, okay,
Yeah, it's the reserves, right?
Mhm,
It's the reserves. And also, we look at weight a little bit differently too. The lens that I look at it through is not that it's a problem ever, right? It just represents something. It can represent protection. What do we need to protect ourselves against?
mhm,
What have we protected ourselves from in the past that we still don't feel safe about?
right.
Healing our relationship with food is often about connecting to safety within, because we looked to food for comfort. And it is natural, right? When we're babies, we're fed whether we're hungry or not, because we're crying. And so as a mom, I've done this, I'm sure. I didn't know exactly what my babies wanted all the time.
Here's a
So, oh
boob. Yeah.
yeah, time for feeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that can end up being, that's a natural human thing, is to emotionally eat. There's nothing wrong with it. There's the tipping point there. And then when it comes to adding more weight, keeping more weight, holding on to more weight, it can be, right, just the comforting, overeating and comforting, and not managing our emotional well-being. Right. And emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, assess, and manage our emotions. So if we're not able to do that, and we're not working on our boundaries and, kind of paying attention to where we are, we can hold on to more weight because of that. We can also hold on to weight if we are not connecting to our own creativity. Weight is protection, it's nourishing, it's comforting, but it's also energy. If we look at it like that, it's stored energy, stored calories. So am I creating something? What is in me that needs to come out on a creative level? If we're not pursuing creativity on any level, that can be another reason. Stored trauma in the body can keep, right? There's so many different reasons. It can just be eating habits sometimes, right? It doesn't have to go this deep. Sometimes it's just that I'm over consuming food, but often it's not. If there's been a struggle with food for years and years and years or decades, then it's usually something more than just eating habits.
Right. I know my friend Maura said that she came into this life as a big person because in her past life, because she had, visions or connections to past lives, where she was like a womanizer in one life, and she was like a prostitute in another, who was like used her body for like manipulation and stuff, like whatever, so like this time around, she was like, all right, but now she's working on it, because she's finally like, she's doing the work on herself. So she's dropped a bunch since in the last couple of years. So, and she has a whole program about that, like uncover your healing, I think, or it's something like that. I'm sorry, Maura, but but it's really empowering, and it's really important. So it's cool to see her journey, in getting in touch with herself. But yeah,
it's a
protection mechanism too.
It is. It's such a journey, and it's so deeply personal, and it's so intimate, really, in a way, because you're getting to know yourself on deeper levels. And I truly believe that is often the calling of disordered eating and eating disorders, is to connect deeper and deeper, because it calls us back into our bodies. Even if we think about just the very act of overeating, if I'm eating a lot of food, it brings my awareness into my body, because I'm like, oh, I ate so much, I ate too much. Boom, consciousness drops down in here. And when we're like, oh no, I'm back up here, I'm in my default mode network, which is just the system of the brain that takes over when we are on autopilot and we're not really present or mindful about our situation, whatever we're doing. We can drive and we don't know how we got from point A to point B. Default mode network kicks in. And it allows us to just go through life without really being present. But disordered eating, overeating, binge eating, different eating disorders call you back, because it's saying, come back into the body. This is where you connect with yourself. That's where you can experience alignment, is through it. So I truly believe there's a purpose. And I'm not going to say every single person who's struggling with their relationship with food or an eating disorder that it's a spiritual journey for them. I don't know for them, but what I can see, it's almost is clear as day that these are some of the issues that are showing up because we're not connected. And it's just showing up. It's not about the food. It's our relationship with ourselves.
That's so wonderful. I'm so happy that you could share this information with people and to offer that insight, because I think it's a message that people, could benefit from hearing. So thank you for talking. I'm like, oh my God, it's already been a while, so we probably should wrap it up.
It has been. Yeah. Well, I always enjoyed talking with you, and this was so great. I appreciate you inviting me into your space to share. And I think that, we all deserve to feel peaceful and free around food, and to kind of break free and reject this diet culture that we're all bombarded with. And that's my mission, really, is to just shed light on it. Just reject it. Sometimes it can just be as simple as saying, I'm done with this. I'm letting it go. And sometimes that can work for some people, and just say, screw it, whatever. I'm just going to love, I'm choosing, I'm deciding, and I'm intending to love and accept myself as I am, period.
Yeah.
And there isn't more after that. It's
Right.
just like, it's a decision. And for some people, they need support and they need kind of connection and somebody to walk with them through that journey too. And so I love to provide that for people who are in that space where they need that one-on-one.
Yeah, I know. And I know that you're so gifted and so tuned in. So I'm sure that anybody who, signs up with you would be, reap the benefits of your insights. And even if you don't want to work one-on-one, they could follow you on Instagram and be inspired, just like I am every time I watch your stuff. I always appreciate what you put out. So what's your handles on social media and all that stuff?
Instagram is Nicolette's Mirror. And I'm most active there. Facebook is really something I somewhere I don't.
Yeah, it's like kind of trugging along, but not really your main focus.
Yeah, but I'm Health Immersion.
Okay. I was wondering, I'm like, is your business name the same as it was that I knew, a Health Immersion? Okay.
It's still, yes, it's still Health Immersion, but I just have the different Instagram handle.
Yeah. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, also, do you have a website?
Yes, healthimmersion.com.
Okay, there you go. So I'll put
it. I can send you the information to link it.
Yeah, I'll put all that stuff in there, and so people can find you. So thank you again for hanging out with us and talking and sharing your knowledge. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, Karen. I always love talking to you.
Thanks a lot. Me too. I'll see you.
Okay, take care.